In the earlier session, I am referring casual taxable person. Furthermore, referring with regard to casual taxable person. Here, Mr. SRK, being a taxable supplier of services in Mumbai, Maharashtra, came to Andhra Pradesh, I mean to say Tamil Nadu, I said, in the state of Tamil Nadu, he is carrying temporarily his what we can call business or profession on temporary basis required for compulsory registration in the state of Tamil Nadu. I said it. Further, here in this regard, I am furthermore bringing certain points, my dear friends, with regard to casual taxable person. Casual taxable person intends to extend the period of registration, as I told you earlier, for further 90 days or the period for which is sought for registration, whichever is earlier, like that they can extend their registration time period only once. In that case, for extension of a registration for which casual taxable person should submit form GST or AG11, which is a particular request to extend the casual taxable person registration to extend need to submit form GST or AG11. Further, a casual taxable person also required to submit as usual, like others normal taxpayers, form GST R1 followed by form GST or 3B. As per due dates, they should submit. They can pass the credit to their recipients. At the same time, as a casual taxable person, if you notice at the time of expiry of registration, if you notice as a casual taxable person, you already paid excess payment of tax in the name of advance tax, which is not required to pay. You came to know at the time of expiry of your registration. Such casual taxable person well eligible to ask for refund of such excess payment of tax, provided it should have been filed the periodical returns GSTR 1 followed by GSTR 3B throughout the registration period. Further, such casual taxable person not required to submit annual return form GST or 9 annual return not required to submit. So these are the points are well valid for a casual taxable person. Now I presented that for your kind consideration. Further, my dear friends, referring to here registration mandatory required under section 24 of the CGST, there are so many clauses we have, up to 12 clauses we have, referring one by one. Now I am referring furthermore reverse charge section 24 clause 3. In the case where the recipient of the goods, the recipient of services liable to pay GST, such a recipient, for him a registration is mandatory irrespective of the turnover of the recipient. Namely, the recipient should mandatorily get registered and pay the GST. What is the process of registration? Regular normal registration. What is applicable for a normal taxpayer registration is the same registration for a reverse charge where the recipient liable to pay GST under RCM. Sir, if a person who already registered under GST, who received the goods or services, but the recipient liable to pay GST, separate registration not warranted. Whatever registration you have with you is sufficient to pay the GST under reverse charge as well. So in this regard, I am bringing to a notice one simplified example already covered under the chapter called reverse charge. The same I am bringing for a kind consideration in the given case. Look here, an individual other than body corporate, supplier of service, any person but other than body corporate, he supplied renting of motor vehicle services where the rental charges includes the fuel cost also. Provide this renting of motor vehicle services meant for transportation of passengers to a particular body corporate. To a body corporate. Body corporate being a recipient receive the rent a motor vehicle services or rent a cab services, supplier charging the rental charges which includes cost of fuel thereon. In that case, being a recipient, body corporate is liable to pay GST. For such body corporate to pay the GST, if they not got registered, compulsory should get registered and pay the GST, even though the body corporate being a recipient turnover not exceeded the threshold limit for registration, they have to compulsory registered under GST to pay the GST under RCM. So this point already we referred, again I am referring here under the compulsory registration, section 24 class 3 of the CGST. Further, my dear friends, here for whom registration is required? Registration required for the recipient. Is clear? Further, section 24 class 4, person who are required to pay tax under section 9 subsection 5 of the CGST or section 5 subsection 5 of the IGST Act, as the case may be. What is this is? Already we covered the following category of persons are liable to pay GST only by e-commerce operator. In the case of radio taxi or omnibus or any other motor vehicle, services are providing through e-commerce operator. E-commerce operator only liable to pay GST. Short-term accommodation supplier of service, housekeeping supplier of services, if they are uninsured persons because their turnover not exceeded the threshold limit for registration, such housekeeping supplier of services, such short-term accommodation supplier of services, if they provide these services through e-commerce operator, e-commerce operator only liable to pay GST, as if e-commerce operator is a supplier of short-term accommodation, as if e-commerce operator is a supplier of the housekeeping services. They are liable to pay GST. Who liable to pay GST? E-commerce operator liable to pay GST. When the housekeeping supplier of services, short-term accommodation supplier of services are the uninsured persons. Further also we referred cloud kitchen. Cloud kitchen means takeaway services, takeaway. Restaurant, takeaway services. And such a restaurant, takeaway services providing through e-commerce operator. E-commerce operator liable to pay GST. Look here, a restaurant where food is carrying by e-commerce operator to customer. Restaurant, cloud kitchen only supplying through e-commerce operator, not sit and eat possible. There is no sit and eat in the restaurant, only takeaways. In that case, such a restaurant providing takeaway services through e-commerce operator not at all liable for registration. Even if they already hold the registration, apply for the cancellation of registration set by the CBIC. Restaurant providing cloud kitchen services of restaurant nature, absolutely away from the GST. Who liable to pay GST? E-commerce operator who supplying that food by pick up from the restaurant and delivering to customer. Pick up from restaurant, delivering to customer. E-commerce operator only liable to pay GST. compulsory registration under GST to e-commerce operator. Restaurant fellow not required to pay GST, not required to have registration. Even if restaurant already hold the registration, apply for cancellation of registration. In the given case, my dear friends, one should understand that the restaurant should be located at a place other than specified premises. The restaurant should be located other than specified premises. What do you mean by specified premises? A particular hotel accommodation providing per day per room more than or equal to 7,500, like a 5-star hotels. In that particular location, this restaurant should not be located. That's it. Then in the given case of a restaurant cloud kitchen other than the specified areas, means restaurant not located in a hotel where the accommodation charging per day per room more than or equal to 7,500, it is not locating there. In that case, in that given situation, this particular restaurant not liable for registration at all. Only e-commerce operator liable to pay GST, because restaurant providing what? Only cloud kitchen. That means order receiving through online and fulfilling that order by sending through e-commerce operator. E-commerce operator only liable to pay GST. These are the categories falls under section 9 subsection 5. Wherever supply falls under section 9 subsection 5 of the CGST, where the e-commerce operator only liable to pay GST. For e-commerce operator, registration is mandatory. Further, my dear friends, non-resident taxable person. Who is he? Basically, NRI. In general, such a non-resident not holding any PAN number, he belongs to outside India, coming to India on temporary basis to carry out taxable supply of goods or services in India. If so, in India, such person is called as non-resident taxable person. For him, registration under the GST law is made mandatory. Such a non-resident taxable person should ensure that to pay advance tax prior to 5 days of the commencement of his business in India. Sir, what form he should apply for the want of registration, sir? For them, a valid passport is required to accompany along with the registration application. For the want of registration, form GST RAG09 is an application for registration under the GST for non-resident taxable person, accompanied along with a valid passport, because such a NRI, non-resident taxable person, won't have the PAN number in India. Therefore, valid passport is sufficient to enclose as a proof of his existence. Apply for the want of registration by paying the advance tax prior to 5 days from the date of the commencement of the business in India. Further, such a non-resident taxable person required to file, after having compulsory registration under the GST, monthly return. Form GST or 5, monthly return required to file by such particular non-resident taxable person. What is the due date of filing the form GST or 5? By 13th of the following month, every month. How long this registration of non-resident person is valid means for a period of 90 days from the date of registration, or the period for which this particular person sought for the registration. Among these 2 days, among these 2 periods, whichever is earlier, up to that, the registration for non-resident taxable person is valid. Sir, are they able to extend it Yes, further 90 days period, or for further the period for which they sought for extension, whichever is earlier, provided before making the application for the want of extension, they have to pay additional advance tax. What is the advance tax? Net liability is sufficient to pay. Sir, if their registration is going to be expired, sir, today is what day? Today is the 5th of October, sir. Is it so? 5th of October means not required to wait up to 13th of October to file the GST 5 return. They said by 13th of the following month, or within 7 days after the last day of the period of registration. Among these two, whichever is earlier, sufficient to file Form GST 5. In case where if the for a given tax period the registration is going to expire and need not want to wait for the next month up to 13th. They are saying here 13th of the following month, or within 7 days after the period of expiry of registration. Among these two, whichever is earlier, within which you can submit the form GST 5 monthly, required to file the return. Such a non-resident taxable person not eligible to avail input tax credit. Such a non-resident taxable person not eligible to opt composition scheme, as you are already aware of that. Such non-resident taxable person eligible to avail input tax credit only in the case where if they have been imported the goods by payment of IGST, that IGST alone they can avail the input tax credit. Whatever the GST they purchase, paying the purchase GST paid goods, whatever locally they purchase, absolutely ITC is not allowed, which is a blocked credit. I already referred to you. For a non-resident taxable person, ITC is not allowed except import of goods on which IGST paid. That alone ITC is allowed. Further, my dear friends, here annual return required to file, not required to file by non-resident taxable person. GSTR 9 not required to file. Are they eligible to claim refund? Yes. When the refund they are eligible to claim. A non-resident taxable person is eligible to claim refund. Yes, if they paid advance tax more than actual liability, which they came to know at the end of the expiry of the registration, in that case they can ask for refund, provided they should have been filed the return properly for all tax period for which their registration is exist. How long the registrations exist, so long they have been filed the return properly. Then whatever they paid excess amount of advance tax, if they notice at the time of expiry of registration, they can ask for refund allowed to avail by non-resident taxable person, with one condition: return should have been filed properly. So for a non-resident taxable person, registration is mandatory. The process I have been explained to you in a simplified manner, my dear friends. Further, a persons who are required to deduct TDS, tax deducted at source, tax deducted at source. Under the GST, we have section 51 of the CGST talks about TDS. Unlike of your income tax, who are required to deduct the TDS, DDOs, drawing and disbursement officers. Who are they? Government department, local authority, public sector undertaking company, government agencies, trust registered in the Trust Societies Registration Act. A society registered under the Societies Registration Act required to deduct the TDS where the value of supply of goods or services as per the contract value exceeded 2,50,000. Such a supply is a taxable supply. In that case, TDS, CGST 1%, SGST 1%, at interest rate level TDS effectively 2% need to deduct by the recipient of the goods or services, and whatever deducted the TDS amount should make the payment to department. For making the payment to department as a TDS deductor, such a TDS deductor should have to have separate registration irrespective of their having normal registration or not. In addition to their normal registration, as a TDS deductor, I should apply a separate application for the want of registration under this particular GST law to avail registration for payment of TDS. So TDS payer to department mandatorily registered in GST law irrespective of their turnover limit, irrespective whether they are having the normal registration or not. It is in addition to normal registration. TDS deductor. About the TDS, I will explain to you in detailed manner under the chapter tax deducted source. Further referring to you, my dear friends. Person who makes taxable supply of goods or services or both on behalf of another taxable person, whether as an agent or otherwise, covered under Schedule 1, point number 3. That means, you are aware of that, no? The principal appointed the agent is selling the goods on his own account on behalf of the principal. You are aware of that. Supply of goods by the principal to his agent, where the agent undertaken to supply the goods on behalf of the principal, or supply of goods by the agent to his principal, where the agent undertaken to receive the goods on behalf of his principal. That is going to cover under the Schedule 1, point number 3, subpoint A, subpoint B. There are subpoint A, subpoint B under the point number 3 of Schedule 1, where ownership should be transferred. Agent should transfer the ownership on the goods. Title should be transferred by issuing his own invoice. Then only supply of goods. That I already referred to you. Again I am presenting. In such case, I am now going to present. In such case, for such agent, registration is mandatory. Referring here. Look, my dear friends. Mr. A, an artist who has been appointed B as auctioneer to sell his paintings. Mr. B is a simple to say agent. Mr. A is the principal. Mr. B identified a successful bidder to whom Mr. B sold his all painting by issuing his own invoice. The invoice for the supply of the painting is issued by Mr. B on behalf of Mr. A, but in his own name, and the painting is delivered to the successful bidder. That means Mr. B uses his own rights to transfer the title and the goods. So in that case, seller of the goods B, buyer of the goods is the bidder. But relationship between A and B is principal and agent, supply of goods. In that case, for the agent, for the auctioneer, registration is made mandatory under the GST law. See, in this scenario, B is not merely providing auctioneering services, but is also supplying the painting on behalf of Mr. A to the bidder, and has the auctioneer to transfer the title to the painting on behalf of Mr. A. This scenario is covered under Schedule 1, point number 3. In that case, supply of goods. In that case, the registration for the agent or auctioneer is made mandatory. Further, my dear friends, input service distributor, for whom also registration is made mandatory. This point already covered under the input tax credit chapter. Under the input tax credit chapter, section 20, when I am referring, I too referred this particular slide also to you, where X Limited Chennai, X Limited Bangalore, X Limited Hyderabad is the size of the organization. They are called distinct persons. X Limited Chennai, X Limited Bangalore received advertising services from a supplier of service and raised one invoice in favor of X Limited Chennai. In that case, X Limited Chennai received the value of input services 3 lakhs, on which GST, CGST 27,000, SGST 27,000. In that case, that credit fully not belongs to Chennai office. It is also belongs to Bangalore office, because the inward supply received by Chennai as well as Bangalore offices. In that case, X Limited Chennai want to distribute the credit proportionately to Bangalore office also. In that case, take the previous year turnover as a base to distribute the credit. If not, take the current year one quarter to complete, that immediately preceding the quarter turnover you take as a base to distribute the credit. You should not distribute the credit on input services to the unit which is not received any input services, and you should not distribute more than what is available for distribution. This is all possible only when the X Limited Chennai obtain the registration in addition to normal registration as input service distributor, then only possible to distribute the credit. So such X Limited, in our given example Chennai office, need to obtain separate registration as an input service distributor mandatorily under section 24 clause 8 for distribution of credit to their other units, on input services tax credit. They should have to have separate registration irrespective of the turnover. Mandatory registration. If you want to act as input service distributor, distribute the credit to its own branches having distinct registrations. In that case, you have to have separate registration as the input service distributor, but one PAN number having multiple registrations. In that case only this input service distribution concept is going to hold good. Further, my dear friends, referring here, compulsory registration. Up to class 8 we referred, class 9 I am referring here. Persons who supply of goods other than supply specified under section 9(5) through such e-commerce operator who is required to collect the tax at source under section 52. My dear sir, my name is Apple Incorporation, seller of cell phones, Apple phones, iPhones. My name is Apple Incorporation. I am selling my cell phones, iPhones through e-commerce operator in India. I am a supplier of the goods. When I supply the goods through my e-commerce operator, who is liable to pay tax here? Supplier should have to pay. Apple Incorporation liable to pay tax. Mandate should register. I am a supplier of the goods. If I supply the goods through e-commerce operator, for supplier of the goods, it is mandatory to have registration. Sir, Apple Incorporation is a big company. For them, registration is not a matter. Leave it. Look to me. I am XN company. I am selling cell phone covers, not cell phones. Cell phone covers I am selling. Who am I? XN company. These cell phone covers I am selling through e-commerce operator. Hey Mr. Seller of cell phone covers, what is your name? XN company. You must compulsorily should registered under the GST. Why sir? Because you are selling through e-commerce operator. What? Your goods, not services applicable here. If I supply these services through e-commerce operator, then for a supplier of services, registration is required only when the aggregate turnover exceeded the threshold limit for registration. For supplier of goods through e-commerce operator, irrespective of turnover of the supplier, supplier should get compulsory registered in GST because you supply the goods through e-commerce operator. For you, registration made mandatory. Sir, my turnover is only 2 lakhs, sir. So what? You are supplying the goods through e-commerce operator, no? Sir. In that case, go for registration compulsorily. For XN company, being a supplier of the goods, cell phone covers through e-commerce operator, XN company should get registered compulsorily under GST law. Further, section 24, clause 10. Every electronic commerce operator who is required to collect the tax at source, TCS, whoever in a position to collect the tax, whoever in a position to collect the TCS, TCS who is going to collect the e-commerce operator. Hey, Mr. E-commerce operator, for you, TCS is made mandatory to collect. Sir. And what to collect the TCS should pay the payment department. I am now coming to make the payment. Have you obtained separate registration as a TCS collector? No, sir. I am holding a normal registration. Sorry. Hey, Mr. E-commerce operator, your registration you keep in your pocket. You should obtain separate registration as TCS collector to pay the TCS amount. TCS amount should make the payment having a separate registration. Is TCS who will collect e-commerce operator and pay to department having a separate registration in addition to normal registration. What is it is resulted, you know, sir, when the tax deducted at source, TDS collected and deposited in the GST department to the government. TCS collected and deposited. They have separate as a TDS deductor, separate registration, as a TCS registration, separate. TCS collector, separate registration to deposit the TCS. When I paid this TCS to department, when I paid the TDS to the department having separate registrations, auto populating that amount from whom I had deducted in their electronic cash ledger. For example, XN company selling the goods through e-commerce operator, XN company registration is compulsory. This e-commerce operator should deduct TCS and pay to department. Then whenever paid to department, it is auto populating in the XN company electronic cash ledger. Yeah, you have this much of balance. While paying the GST by XN company, they can utilize this electronic cash ledger balance amount. Yes, they can utilize and pay the balance amount. Now please come back. I am referring what? Only registration mandatory cases only, nothing else. Further, my dear friends, section 24, class 11. Every person supplying online information and database access or retrieval services from place outside India to a person in India other than a registered person. As you are aware of that, if I being an individual import the OIDR services even for my personal purposes by paying the consideration to my supplier of OIDR wala only liable to pay GST. In that case, OIDR wala should have to have a place of business in India. Otherwise, OIDR wala should have to have a representative in India to pay the GST. So, for such OIDR wala liable to pay GST, for him registration is made mandatory under section 24, clause 11. Further, section 24, clause 12, which says that GST council, if tomorrow said so and so should get registered compulsorily, Then by notification, Government of India will make mandatory the registration if the GST Council notifies. These are the cases where registration is made mandatory under section 24. We have clause 1 to clause 12 under section 24 where the registration is made mandatory. Here, this point I am going to conclude, my dear friends. With regard to handicraft goods, supplier below the annual threshold limit for registration engaged in interstate taxable supplies exempted from registration. Now you said no, sir. XN company, supplier of the goods through e-commerce operator, XN company compulsorily should get registered. Such compulsory registration not applicable in the case where handicraft goods supplied through e-commerce operator or such a handicraft goods wala supplied the goods at interstate level. At interstate level supply of goods, even 1 rupee taxable supply liable for registration compulsorily. But such a stipulated condition not applicable to a handicraft goods wala who supplied the goods at interstate level. In that case, such handicraft goods supplier will go for registration only when his aggregate turnover exceeded the threshold limit for registration. So, with this, I covered the registration required category, my dear friends. So far, I referred section 22. What are the cases? Registration is mandatory based on the turnover limit, based on the succession, based on the amalgamation and all. Section 23, registration not required category. Section 24, irrespective of the turnover, registration is mandatory. So once the registration is mandatory, we should know thoroughly the procedure of registration, which I will refer to you in the subsequent class by tomorrow at early morning 6:45 a.m. sharply. We are going to start the class to discuss the procedure of registration. There we have certain amendments. I will bring to your notice by highlighting it. Is it clear, my dear? Tomorrow we have the class sharply at 6:45 a.m. Thank you, my dear friends. Good night. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Good night.